Introducing the new DigiCert. As the leading provider of high-assurance SSL, TLS, and PKI certificates, DigiCert is all about improving security across the web and IoT. DigiCert is committed to helping customers and partners successfully deploy identity, authentication, and encryption solutions. They'll even help you figure out which certificate you need to secure your web domains, apps, devices, and more. Check out the Cert Wizard tool under the SSL tab on digicert.com. The average time between being hacked and realizing you've been hacked is 1 year. Can you afford to let an intruder roam your network for that long? Can your company weather the fallout when this comes to light? Black Hills Information Security can find the bad guys in your network and train you to do it yourself. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to find out how a hunt teaming engagement can help you find a persistent threat in your network. Signal Sciences is the industry's first web protection platform that works in any cloud, any container, any platform as a service, and any modern application architecture. The Signal Sciences web protection platform can be deployed in next-generation WAF, RASP, or reverse proxy modes, giving customers ultimate flexibility and coverage. Protect your web applications with Signal Sciences web protection platform. Signal Sciences, protecting applications, connecting teams. For more information, check them out at signalsciences.com/PSW. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. Just a couple of quick announcements. I want to mention DigiCert, as you saw the advertisement during the break there. And I apologize if I get this wrong. So Symantec sold their SSL business, like their CA business, to DigiCert. DigiCert wants everyone to know that, hey, buy your certs from us. And the briefing calls we've had with their marketing teams and marketing agencies, they're very well positioned to handle all of your CA and cert needs and want to address the concerns that the community may have in, well, I had Symantec certificates and now it's this DigiCert thing, and who the hell is DigiCert? And they are very committed, so much so that they found us and said, hey, we want the security community to know that we're committed to providing a secure service, that we're going to take care of everyone's certs. And I have to say, very honestly, obviously they're a sponsor, but I've enjoyed working with their marketing firm. They have a lot of respect for the folks here at Security Weekly and the security community at large. So,
speaking of which, securityweekly.com uses a DigiCert cert, doesn't it?
It might somewhere.
Either
might
way,
be changing.
Either way, the wildcard cert for Security Weekly.
Yes, there is a wildcard cert. Yeah, because I was lazy.
Acts weird sometimes depending on where you are.
Yeah, and there'll be a new one as we cut over to. Actually, we're cutting over to WP Engine. We've already cut over 2 of our other sites to WP Engine, which I like a lot. Kind of free plug for WP Engine, but especially if you're working in that DevOps process and want a really good like dev, QA, and production environment, WP Engine does a great job of doing that. I'm still working with the various security components and some of the redirection stuff. And rolled right into their service, there's like a free cert and there's a paid cert that WP Engine can just like implement. So I don't have to do all the command line things and all that stuff, which I don't mind doing. But, you know, when you get 3 sites, and then you've got a dev, QA, and production for each one of them, you know, that it can get kind of a laborious task. So they'll probably, just a heads up, there'll probably be a new cert for securityweekly.com, you know, once I cut it over. Although I may port the old cert over for some time, I may actually just like get rid of that cert and just switch to a new one that integrates with their platform. So it's a good question, Larry. It's interesting.
I was at SANS conference in Austin through the portal, through whatever internet that was provided the hotel, and it gave me some errors on the wildcard SSL cert. And actually, one of our customers wrote to me because they listened to the show and all that stuff, and said, "Oh, you guys so crazy with your wildcard cert." Thanks, Brandon. And
we're wild with our wildcard cert.
Yeah. And like he was getting block notification from their filtering services.
Yeah.
So. Yeah,
and I may actually kill the wildcard and just go straight subdomain, cert for every domain and subdomain within Security Weekly.
Wise.
Yeah, and so I may make that change. So. Especially some things we got coming up this year for Security Weekly. So we'll be improving upon that.
So many projects, so little time.
But if you need training on all those projects, SSL or cracking the hashes, as Joff is going to talk about, you can visit our fine friends at IT Pro TV, itpro.tv/Security Weekly. Use the code Security Weekly 30, try it free for 7 days, or get your entire organization a group account or a business account, and you can gain your fellow employees can all gain access to IT Pro TV and be able to track all of your various departments and employees' progress on your training and assign them training modules. So make sure you go to itpro.tv/Security Weekly. Joff Fire, it's over to you to talk about cracking password hashes.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Paul's going to let me talk. Wait, what? My video is very delayed. That's very
delayed.
weird.
It's very freaky. Yes.
Yeah, it's very, very freaking weird. Okay. I'm going
You're
to
at 50%
try to share
speed,
screen here.
But the video isn't.
Whoa, that's weird. Can you guys see what looks like a presentation?
Yep.
Vaguely like a presentation, yes.
Yeah.
Sort of.
And this is weird.
You
guy
see a
named
dude
John.
with a hat.
Remind me.
Okay. So I'm not going to talk so much about cracking as how to handle domain controllers gently when you're in that situation. So here we go. Quick text segment. And I will admit that I wrote this in all of 45 minutes. So here we go. But I've been doing it this week. So, it is what it is. Okay, so here we go. Yay, I've got my DA. What do I mean by that? Well, let's imagine for a minute that you're a pen tester, which I imagine a lot of our listeners are, and you are fortunate to have gained privilege. Well, what do I mean by gained privilege? Well, maybe you've password sprayed. Maybe you have compromised some local privilege escalation situation, and you've dumped some memory using LSAS.
Active Directory. I have pwned thee. Let me count the ways.
One,
yeah, there's so
two,
many ways, right?
crunch.
10,000.
Right. So 10,000 ways to pwn the Active Directory, be it, not just Active Directory, be it password spraying, be it, misconfigured services with a path, space in the path name, DLL hijacking, you name it. Let's say that you've got some privileges. So you're excited, and it's not just a little bit of privilege, it's domain administrative privilege. So you're even more excited, and you want to pillage the village and grab all the things. Well, of course you want to do this, and you should go ahead and enumerate all the shares and find some interesting servers and do the right thing. But there's a particular side case here, a particular use case where maybe you want to go the extra mile and do a password audit for the customer. What do I mean by that? I mean, grab all the hashes and download them and crack them and tell the customer exactly how weak their passwords are on an organization-wide basis. Well, the old way. Briefly, and admittedly, I put these slides together in 30 minutes. I said I did, right? The old way, let's go ahead and get a metropolis session on the domain controller, a domain controller. There's probably many, using a psexec method and use hash dump, or use post Windows gather smart hash jump, which is, I think I've been drinking. I said smart _ hash dump, which is written by our good friend Carlos Perez. It's an excellent script. But here's the problem. In a domain controller, somebody's going to say, what problem, right? I was about to hear that.
What problem, Joff?
What problem, Joff? Thank you, Larry. In a domain controller, if you run smart hash dump or the good old-fashioned hash jump, you are interacting with the LSAS process.
Oh.
And if you interact with the LSAS process and you extract memory from it on a domain controller...
What could possibly go wrong, Joff?
What could possibly go wrong? Well, in a small environment, and I'm talking maybe 2,000 username credentials or less, you're probably going to be okay. But if you get into a larger environment, something that sort of exceeds about the 5,000 limit, you can crash LSAS. Well, if you crash LSAS, what's going to happen, Larry?
The domain controller will no longer allow logins.
Exactly.
Or any kind of authentication,
right?
And whether it's a login or services trying to authenticate, right? Like any authentication.
Bad things happen to the domain.
It's bad. It's bad.
Bad things could happen. In fact, you could end up in a situation somewhat like this, right? The system is shutting down. LSAS has terminated unexpectedly, and, well, your customer is not going to be happy with you. In fact, more
not
than likely,
that that's ever happened, Joff, right?
no, it's never.
No.
Never.
Right? More than likely, the customer is going to call you up on your contact number and go, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, you crashed my domain controller. And because you're a persistent pen tester, you probably tried this on 2 or 3 domain controllers, and so you crashed several domain controllers.
Sounds like you're speaking from experience, Joff, just saying.
Oh, I have no idea, right? And life is not going to be good for you, right? It's going to look like this twisted mess of a rack here in this.
I have seen these similar types of racks. It was usually due to attenuation due to backhoe.
That's right. So I'm going to drink for a minute before I get to the next part.
You do that, Joff.
Okay, so can we do this better? First of all, as a pen tester, we've got to handle the domain controller with kit gloves. We've got to go gently, all right? Don't go after LSAS with a interpreter module such as hash dump or smart hash dump. Don't try to manipulate the memory of the process. Go ahead and use built-in utilities. There is a utility called NTDS util, which is a command line tool. This is a direct snap of an image right off Microsoft's website that performs database maintenance of Active Directory to manage and control single master operations and to remove metadata, blah, 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 right? And there is the warning here. This tool is intended to be used by experienced administrators, i.e. pen testers, right? So,
You
by
mean
default,
anti-administrators?
anti-administrators, right? By default, NTDS util is installed in WinNT/System32 folder. That's obviously older documentation. It is also installed in Windows/System32 folder. So how can we do this as a pen tester? Well, what NTDS util does is it creates a backup of the Active Directory files which you seek and desire. Instead of, the idea is this, instead of manipulating LSAS on the domain controller and extracting the hash out of LSAS, why not create a full backup of Active Directory, take those files, and then extract the hashes out of those files? And while you're doing that, you're using NTDS util, which is a Microsoft utility that's endorsed for this purpose, and it will not affect the operation of the domain controller. So how do we do this? We do a number of steps within NTDS util. We activate the NTDS instance, first of all, which is, well, desired because we're after NTDS. And then we use the install from media creation option to create a full backup, and then we quit the NTDS util. Okay? Now, normally, if you're in a system admin context, you would do this from a command line utility, which is ntdsutil.exe, and you would do it in multiple steps, just as I've outlined here on this slide. However, you do also have the option, because you're a pen tester, to do this as a single command.
Because who can remember all those steps?
Yeah, who can remember all those steps? Exactly. So there are subcommands to the ntdsutil.exe that go as follows. First of all, activating the NTDS instance is the subcommand acnntds, which is a command line argument that we provide to NTDS util. The install from media option is ifm, which is short for install from media, and then the create full backup option is crfu, and then some sort of directory path in which we want to write those files. Thus, this becomes a single command where you can type in NTDS util. Imagine for a minute you have a shell directly on the domain controller. You can type in NTDS util, quote, acnntds, quote, ifm, quote, crfu, and the path, and then q and q, which basically will take you into the NTDS utility, activate the NTDS instance, push you into the IFM install from media mode, and then create the full backup in the directory path name that you specify, and then subsequently quit from both of those menus. Q quits from IFM, and there's a subsequent Q quits entirely from the NTDS util.
Either way,
Okay.
I like this as a big FU in this command.
There's a big FU in this command. It's really awesome. Okay, so this is great. This assumes that you have domain administrative credentials in that environment. But the next question comes in, how do I actually perform this command from remote? Because I'd rather not remote desktop directly into this domain controller. Well, here's the way I typically do it in most environments. First, I'll go ahead and map a drive to the domain controller $share, and I will create a temporary directory for the results. Now, this is actually important because NTDS util will only write to a directory that has no contents in it. It has to
Hold
be
on,
an
Jeff.
empty
I want to go back to the first part of that. You're mapping a drive from a remote system to a domain controller to see $.
I am, and that
Okay,
is
hold
going
on.
to be potentially
That,
noticeable.
for our listeners, should trigger every single alarm in every single system that's monitoring your network. And if it's not, I need you to stop listening to the podcast now and go check your monitoring systems and make sure that triggers every single alarm it possibly could.
Even if you're driving, pull over, get on the VPN.
Yep.
Do it now.
Make a call.
Now that Paul has literally called me out on that, that is not the only way we can achieve this. We can actually share out a file share from the system we've compromised with full write access to the domain controller, and then have the domain controller write the results to that share. A couple of options, right? But the reason that you may not want to do that is that many times the ntds.util will create files that are extremely large. And if you don't have enough disk space on the system you've compromised, you're going to fail, right? So you have to bear that in mind when you're dealing with the environment. And you need to make a logical conclusion or a judgment call, if you like, as to how many users you have in the environment. Is it 5,000? Is it 50,000? Is it 100,000? As to what's going to happen with the results that you're looking to extract here. Okay.
Sounds a lot like you're taking a guess there, Jeff.
Excuse me.
Yeah,
Sorry.
short version, as Jeff said, taking a guess. Now, the other thing that you can do after you've mapped this drive is go ahead and create this NTDS util command using WMIC from your compromised system. Now, this again assumes that you have a shell command on your compromised system. You can use other mechanisms to get this. You could, for example, use a Metasploit module to create a WMIC call. It doesn't have to be just a shell directly on the system. But nonetheless, here is the syntax if you have a shell directly on the system: WMIC/node, the IP address of the domain controller, /user, whatever your powerful username is, and by powerful I mean domain administrative username, with the password, process call create cmd.exe. And the important thing is here, there is a lot of escaping of a quotes here, because if we don't get this right, NTDS util is going to fail miserably. So you have to enclose the whole command in quotes, then you have to escape each of the double quotes around the NTDS util command and the various parameters associated with that command. But if you look at it, it is AC in NTDS, IFM, CRFU with the actual destination directory and to quit, okay, after that. So what are we doing here? We're actually using NTDS util to create a full backup with the perspective of install from media. In other words, a full backup of ntds.dit, the SAM file, and the security file into a directory on that domain controller or a directory that we specify. Okay. Now my panel, with their infinite wisdom, any questions on that?
I think we're good.
No questions. Everybody's good. Okay, so what will happen when you create this? Well, NTDS util will create two subdirectories. One is going to be an Active Directory subdirectory, and the other one will be a registry subdirectory. In the Active Directory subdirectory, we will get a copy of ntds.dit, which is the full Active Directory database of that domain. And in the registry subdirectory, we will get the registry hives of the security and the system files, which represent those individual hives. In other words, what we're getting here is a full representation of the Active Directory database with system and security, which we can then use to reconstruct the hashes in that environment. So a couple of challenges. First of all, in this small example, which is my domain actually, from December of 2017, you can see that the ntds.dit is 27 megabytes in size. My domain consists of maybe 6 usernames at best, okay? So if you're in a situation of maybe 10,000 users, you're going to see an ntds.dit file that is considerably larger than this. And that is one of the downsides of this technique. Even though it's gentle, it is not infringing on LSAS, you are going to create a large file. So what do we do with that large file?
Wait for it to download.
Wait for it to download. Exactly. Larry's on the same page because I bet you Larry has used this technique, right? In a
to the tens of gigabytes, I've used this technique.
Yeah. But it's very, very good. I mean, the reason that this is really good is you are not messing with LSAS and you have very low risk as a pen tester of crashing that target domain controller. Okay. Now, what you want to do is probably zip the results and maybe even base64 encode the results of that zipped file, and then very slowly, let's say you're using Metasploit or something like that, download the file and wait a while until it gets to you. Now, I've been in situations where those 3 files are so large that I've had to actually split the base64 into multiple different pieces and download each piece at a time. But trust me, it's worth the wait, right? Maybe it's 10 pieces, maybe it's 5 pieces, whatever the size of the file is and whatever your best judgment is. Once you download it, you take it over to a Linux system and you run Impacket's secretsdump.py, and you specify the system file, the security file, and the NTDS file. And what gets output is a full text file with all of the NTLM hashes and those usernames, which you can then take over to Hashcat, assuming that you have a nice big cracking system, using -M 13100, which is the NTDS not Kerberos. Okay, let me back out. Say that again because I've been drinking. Sorry. Use -M 1000, which is the NTLM cracking format inside of Hashcat, and basically start to crack those hashes in their entirety. Okay? What we do is we tend to use CrackStation's human readable word list and use additional rules like Ninja LeetSpeak and D3AD and hybrids of dictionary and brute force cracking. And to be perfectly honest, it is not uncommon at Black Hills anyway, and I'm sure that's the same case for Larry at InGuardians, to crack over 70% of the hashes in any one organization. And of those 70% of hashes that we crack, in many cases, a good number of them are going to be domain administrative as well, or other very powerful usernames in the organization.
Absolutely.
So there's my presentation.
It's been like decades since I ran a password cracking program, but I'm assuming you're cracking them relatively quickly.
It's not uncommon for me to be able to obtain 70% of the hashes within about 3 hours. So the first pass is probably going to get me about 40 to 45%. The subsequent passes are going to slowly eke up to greater percentage. Larry, is that sort of consistent with what you're saying?
Absolutely, and it will depend on the size of the environment and how good your pot file and stuff is for doing these as well.
And are you starting out with like the 100 most common passwords of the year type of thing? Do you game your password cracking at all?
Of course we do.
Yeah, absolutely. We use a combination of things, right? CrackStation's human readable word list from the crackstation.net project is very good. The old rockyou.txt from the rockyou compromise is also very good. And then for those organizations that have cracked passwords in the past, we sometimes retain a history of some of those things that are cracked. I'm not going to speak to which things we retain history of. And then additionally, it's often very, very good to go ahead and surf the organization's website and pull down common words associated with that organization using a tool like Cool from DigiNinja.
Yeah, CEWL. Yep.
CEWL.
Wow, it's taking me back.
Still fucking brilliant.
Works. Still really good.
Wow,
I
used to do that manually. Wow.
Paul still does it manually too, but oh wait.
And there's always like the look at the season and the year, or look at the like local sports events that are going on. So like I imagine you probably saw a bunch of people that were like Patriots 2018. You know, like you're going to find it. So
there's another tool out there.
Keith, now I gotta change my password. God damn it.
And there's another tool out there, and I can't remember the name of the tool, and they talked about it at a bunch of conferences, inspired by some of my talks for password cracking, and it was about building password lists based on locality and all sorts of fun stuff.
Local sports teams.
I'll think of it.
Local points of interest, that type of thing.
If only we could remember everything that we
saw in the past. I know.
But so cracking aside for a minute, I mean, the important message that I want to bring home is two things. First of all, you must have permission to pen test, without a doubt, right? I mean, this has to be done under contract. Doing these kinds of activities is absolutely illegal. Will get you thrown in jail if you're not under contract with a company to do it. You know, I think we say that all the time on Security Weekly. I just want to make sure that we reinforce that. The second thing is, this is a very gentle way of being able to crack hashes out of a domain environment without hurting the domain controller and without risking that domain controller being...
No, and I think you summed up like, what problem are we solving with this technical segment, Joff, very succinctly right there, right? And that's awesome. Without impacting the domain controller, how can you crack the hashes? So, Joff, that was awesome. With that, we're going to take a short break, come back, and get into the security news for this week.
Security
so stay
news?
tuned.
The security news?
Security news.
Security news.